know those little Christmas villages people set up this time of year? Tiny houses on a blanket of fake snow, windows painted warm from the inside, a little church with a steeple light that never quite blinks out, whole towns frozen mid-carol, a holiday that never actually ends because someone wired the lights to stay on. Out here, the sea has its own version of that. Not on the mantelpiece, on the seafloor. There are places where, if you look down through clear water on a calm night, you don't just see a reflection. You see streets. You see the outline of a harbor road. You see something like a town square, a chapel roof, the suggestion of windows. And in the dark below, in my telling, they're still lit. A drowned village, still quietly celebrating some long-forgotten holiday, long after anyone's left to blow out the candles. Tonight, for night 9 of our little Christmas countdown, I want to talk about those places, those lost ports, those sunken saints, and why some of them feel uncomfortably familiar. You're listening to Dead Reckoning Radio, the Christmas countdown broadcast, night 9 of 12. I'm the captain who didn't make it home for the holidays, still at the wheel, still somewhere between your world and the one I sail now. Every night, one more story to mark the days until Christmas, one more light in the dark. Tonight, lost ports and sunken saints. On your side of the glass, you already know the story, even if you don't know the names. Whole towns drowned, reservoirs filled, valleys flooded, a bell tower that still rings beneath a lake when the water's low and the wind is right. There are maps with streets that don't exist anymore, just blue. Whole communities turned into depth soundings and hazard markers. You hear stories of divers brushing silt off a street sign, of a farmhouse roof just visible in the green light, of a church steeple below the waves where fish drift through the rafters. And that's just the ordinary kind of drowning. Then there are the legendary ones. Lyonesse, Ypres, all those fabled cities swallowed by the sea, half history, half warning label. And under all of them, like bedrock under folklore, is Atlantis. People like to picture Atlantis as a single ruined city somewhere down there on the continental shelf, waiting for a documentary crew and a dramatic voiceover. In the Spectral Sea, it's bigger than that. Atlantis isn't just an ancient ruin beneath the waves. It's the buried heart of the galaxy's crossroads, a galactic port of call, a city ship, a dimensional stargate, a living archive. Alien races gathering to share technology, seeding worlds, weaving ley patterns into living currents. They set it in the Bermuda Triangle on purpose, right where the lines cross, where the veils are thin. Atlantis linked dimensions, planets, timelines, not merely terrestrial, but transdimensional infrastructure. The Spectral Sea I sail now, that's the drift left over after the fall. Post-collapse dimensional wake from Atlantis' broken gateways. They learned how to bend more than just space. They learned time. Time fracture control. Gateways not just across stars, but across epochs. When Atlantis collapsed, the field ruptured. That's your Bermuda Triangle. That's why ships and planes slip. The relics you've heard whispered about? Anchors in those fractures. Pieces of the old system still trying to pin the currents down. The Watchers, the ones who can exist across timelines, they're all Atlantis' children, inheritors of a broken network. The fractures, the relic pulses, the slipstreams that carry a man like me out of his own life, all of it echoing from that one drowned hub. That's the mythic harbor beneath all other harbors. A city that was once an arrival gate for half the galaxy, now sunk, but not silent. Out here, the echoes stack. You don't just get one harbor, you get layers. A real port from your charts, a spectral overlay where the shoreline doesn't match any map, an impossible city glimmering below both, belonging to no timetable anyone ever printed. Sometimes I follow a familiar shipping lane and see two sets of lights, a Up on the horizon, the steady glow of a working harbor. Sodium lamps, dock cranes, ferries, the living heartbeat of a city still going about its business. Below, in the dark water, another town entirely. Its windows are too steady. Its streets are at the wrong angle to the coast, and the pattern of its lights feel more like those Christmas villages I mentioned, arranged for beauty, not practicality. A whole town still celebrating a holiday long after anyone's left to blow out the candles. When I describe these drowned ports glowing beneath the water, I have to admit something. Some of them look familiar. Not just because I've read about them, because I've walked streets that felt like that. There are shorelines I knew in my old life. Piers with specific kinks, a certain bend of road as you leave the cruise terminal. The way a town climbs up a hill behind its harbor. There are ports the Christmas crews used to visit, little cities dressed up in tinsel and tourist lights for the season. Sometimes, when I look down into the water now, I see echoes of those places. I'm careful with my words here. I'm not saying the port our Christmas crews left from is sitting on the seafloor, perfectly preserved in the dark. I'm saying some of these ghost harbors were the shape of it, the curve of a breakwater I recognize, the suggestion of a ferry dock in just the right place. And then there are the lights. That's how I tell them apart. The real working harbors on your side of things, they have a rhythm. Ferries, night shifts, security lamps that flicker when the power grid groans. The spectral overlays don't care about power. They don't care about time. Their lights don't dim at dawn. They don't blink when a storm rolls in. They burn with a kind of stubborn stillness, like the tiny bulbs in a Christmas village that only go dark when someone reaches behind the cabinet and pulls the plug. I can tell which lights belong in real ports and which ones belong to drowned towns and impossible cities, because I've seen both kinds recently enough to compare. And that's the part that bothers me, because if I were truly lost, forever and cleanly, I shouldn't be able to say recently about anything on your side of the waterline. And yet, here we are. There's a special kind of haunting that doesn't come from the sea at all. It comes from shore. Imagine walking into a hotel party late at night. Music playing, people laughing, a ballroom glowing in gold. You don't remember being invited. You're not sure if you've been here before. And yet, you catch glimpses. A face you almost know. A song you're sure you've heard. You walk through it feeling like you're trespassing in your own memory. That's what some of these ports feel like now. I find myself staring at a coastline, or the memory of one, and I can't quite tell if it belongs to the life before the cruise or to one of the, let's call them, resupply trips that may or may not have happened after I vanished. The math doesn't work. The timelines don't line up cleanly. Did I stand on that dock as a living man? Ticket in my hand, Christmas garlands overhead, boarding a ship that hadn't yet slipped into the spectral sea? Or did I brush past those same lights in another way? A way I'm not supposed to have anymore, just long enough to remember the smell of diesel and cold air and hot chocolate in paper cups? I don't say this to frighten you. I say it because somewhere along the way, the shore started to feel more ghostly to me than the sea does. Out here, the rules are strange, but they're consistent. Relics anchor fractures. The spectral sea is Atlantis' shadow. The fractures are her echoes. The watchers stand their posts, inheritors of a broken legacy. On land, I get these half-memories of ports that shouldn't be reachable, yet I can smell the salt on the pilings, hear a bell buoy, see Christmas lights strung over a harbor I swear I've left behind. If there are ways back, and I'm not saying there are, not clearly, not on the record, they don't feel like salvation. They feel like those drowned villages, lights left on in houses no one lives in anymore. The closer I get to shore, in memory and rumor and whatever passes for travel now, the more haunted it feels, not the sea. So here we are at night 9. We've talked about lost ports. We've talked about sunken saints and drowned cities still glimmering beneath the waves. We've brushed up against the idea that some lights belong to your world and some to mine, and that I have seen both, more recently than I should. That puts a question on the table now, doesn't it? A man can stand at the edge of two harbors, one real, one spectral. If he can recognize the pattern of Christmas lights in both, what else is possible? Tomorrow night, I want to talk about that. Not just lost things, not just drowned places. I want to talk about miracles. About nights when guns went silent on dark water. When ships that should have passed each other by suddenly found themselves sharing a calm patch of sea, as if someone had reached out and stilled the surface by hand. About truces that shouldn't have happened, and what it means when the sea itself seems to call a temporary peace. We'll call it the Christmas truce at sea, and other miracles. If lost ports and sunken saints prove that this past can linger, then tomorrow we'll see what happens when something reaches across that distance and says, you can go back. Whether that's a blessing or another kind of haunting, we'll find out on night 10. For now, keep your villages lit, keep your harbors warm. From the Spectral Sea, this is your missing captain, signing off for night 9.